I'd like to begin with the facts, whether in a small town like McAllen and the Rio Grande, or in Chicago, New York, or Los Angeles. It is business, big business.
Welcome to the Girl Get Visible podcast. This show talks about traffic, marketing, and business. This is for the retailers, the coaches, the course creators, and service providers who want to build a legacy, build authority, and build a brand that people admire. The visible girls who are not afraid to get out of the sea of sameness and to find her tribe. Business owners ready to go from consumers to creators and build an online presence where your tribe can find you. We talk about topics like SEO, content marketing, and business systems, but that's only because our visible girls are ready to do business like a business. Stop hiding in the crowd and get visible.
Girl, get visible. Girl, get visible. Girl, get visible. Girl, get visible.
Hey guys, welcome to today's episode of the Girl Get Visible podcast. This week we have another really great interview. I told you I'm bringing in all my super friends the last couple of weeks to help us get out there, get found, and get visible in the new year. And this is another conversation you guys are going to absolutely love. I've got Cindy Rodriguez Constable. Make sure I get the whole name. Someone else with a whole name, I completely understand. But we've got her here and we're going to talk about getting found in large publications. And so you guys know we talk a lot about, getting visible, SEO, getting on podcasts, which is one of the ways I love to get out there. But we have not talked about large publications. So I'm really excited for what we are going to hear and what we're going to learn from Cindy today. And just excited. We talked a lot online in Messenger. We were saying that before we got started, but we haven't really had a chance to have a real conversation like this. So I'm excited that our first conversation is going to be sharing it with you guys here in Girl Get Visible Land. So Cindy, tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got started with something like writing and working with large publications.
Well, hey, Akila, thank you so much. I'm excited to be here and, talking about getting visible is one of my favorite things because I am a Leo and of course it's all about me. I mean, hello. So let's see, how did I get started? Way back, once upon a time, I want to say, gosh, it would have been 2014, maybe, a long time ago now. I was still employed. I was the chief financial officer for Citi, and I had been in finance for 20-something years at that point. And I was looking to kind of side hustle, moonlight, if you will. So I started a consultancy, taking a few clients on the side. And then a friend of mine introduced me to Kamanzi because he had just gotten published in a major publication writing about leadership. And I was like, oh, wait, that's a thing? And he's like, yeah. He's like, and some of them even pay you. And I was like in dollars? Yeah, because I'm like, are they going to send me a product or something? I don't know. And he said, yeah. So let me introduce you to my writing coach. And so he introduced me to Kamanzi and I hired him to be my writing coach. And he helped me craft my first pitch for the Huffington Post way back when. This was when Ariana Huffington was still part of the HuffPo, and before it took its decline, and now it's back on the upswing again because they've made some changes over there. And I sent a pitch under Kamanzi's tutelage, and Ariana responded to me personally. So one, I was over the moon about that, and she accepted my pitch, and I wrote a story for them about kitchen table economics. And that was my first foray into the world of using publications. And I had just paid someone, a stupid amount of money to build me a website way back then because things were different. And all of a sudden, people were getting on my email list. And I was kind of like, what is going on here? People were reading my article because I had a byline. And in your byline, at the time, they allowed you to have up to 2 hot links to your book or your website or whatever. And so I had a hot link to my website and people were clicking through and finding me and then hiring me. And I was like, shut the front door. What is going on here? So I was like, okay, this commodity dude is on to something. And that's where it began. And then I took a couple of his courses to learn more. And, fast forward, that's a long time ago. We're married. We run the business together, all kinds of things now. And I was familiar with the press, right? Because in my role at the city, the press office was under my purview. So I got to write press releases, talking points for the elected officials, which they never stick to. And then you have to clean that up on the courthouse steps. And boy, is that a challenge. So, just writing and communicating with the public, right? I spoke before the board every Tuesday night. I was kind of the face of the city. So I would go to the homeowners association meeting and the chamber meeting and all the things. And so I thought, why can't I take some of this knowledge and use it in a different way? And, the rest became history. And now I've written for many publications and I've been featured in many, many more. And we taught or have been teaching people how to write for publications and get paid, because I want to stress we do earned media in these streets. We don't do pay to play. Um, and then we launched our software 2 years ago, PR Pitches, and so that folks can have access to the contact, because that seemed to be a stumbling block. Like, who do I pitch? What do I say? How does it work? And so we launched our software with over 4 million media contacts in there. And it's tracking, it has AI, all of the things. And then we host a weekly training with folks to help them along that path. And now we got, over 2,000 people who have been published and paid in over 100 of the world's largest publications. And, we love it. And my husband is a full-time freelance journalist, right? So he writes for everybody under the sun. You name it, he probably writes there. We absolutely love it.
And I love so many parts of your story. I thought we could just talk about that. First of all, that you guys, like, I knew you guys were married, which I always thought was so cute. I love when people like married and work together and stuff like that. But I didn't realize that you met through your work, like through working together or, working on
Yeah.
programs. So that's so dope.
Mhm.
Not only met, married, but you met and married, which is dope.
Mhm.
Also, I used to work in finance too. I don't know if you know, but I used to work for JP Morgan Chase. So
Oh, fun.
finance, I worked in tech and at JP Morgan Chase, but that whole finance background is so interesting. Such an interesting, people don't realize, I think sometimes, like when they think finance, they think you did numbers all the time.
Right.
Realize like, no, every company has tech, but they have a huge tech organization. They have a huge marketing and content organization. Like they have all these huge sub organizations in
Yeah.
something like a major finance company, and really most major companies, but definitely in finance, people just like, oh, you're good with numbers. I'm like, no, I'm horrible with numbers. This is like I used to work before finance. I worked in healthcare. I'm horrible with patient care. Right? I do tech, right? But anyway,
Right. I was in the industry, but I didn't do that. Yeah. Well, and I was on the numbers side. Yeah. So I did put out the financials and,
oh, you did. Okay.
ran budget, accounting, procurement, all things. But my position at Citi was like in the equivalent of the C-suite, right? So I had multiple departments under my purview.
Understand.
But I did do the numbers part, right? So I am a little bit of a spreadsheet geek.
Okay.
And I've been in finance on all sides of the house, right? So I've been in brokerage. I started out in brokerage way back in the 90s. I worked for Dean Witter Reynolds, and then it became Dean Witter, and then it became Morgan Stanley Dean Witter, and then it became Morgan Stanley. But I never left my desk. And the sign on the outside said, mergers and acquisitions in the finance space. And then I was in banking. I was a branch manager at Bank of America for many, many years. And then I crossed over to government finance right before the housing crisis happened. It was around 2006. I moved to government finance, and I was there until I retired in 2018. So I've done every facet of the numbers side, in addition to other things, because we would joke that in the government space, in local government in particular, so as a city here in Florida, local government is like a multinational business with a little general government on the side. And we say that because we had all of the lines of business. So we had an airport, we had electric utility, water utility, sanitation, stormwater, swimming pools, so golf courses. So a lot of business entities that had to operate like businesses. And then you have a little bit of general government on the side, which is your like services, police, fire, pave the street, things that have to happen. So running finance for a city like that was like running a multinational, because you're doing books differently for those business entities. You've got federal regulations you've got to deal with. I've got inspectors coming to the airport, all kinds of stuff. So you get a really broad swath of knowledge, when you're in finance, because in any company, if the money says no, it's not going to happen.
It's
So
like similar to tech, like just like we got tech everywhere, we got finance
mhm,
too. I
exactly.
love I love your background, and I don't know. Well, we were talking about this from the post I made in one of the groups we're in, but we're talking more now this year to more of like I call my corporate girlies because they need to get found and get visible too. And so I love your background coming out of corporate, even working in government, but coming out of a bunch of different places, and then bringing it into what you're now doing with your company and consulting and having a SaaS and all that great stuff. But I want to dig back into publications. I probably might go back there too. But I want to dig back into publications. So we had some publication questions. You guys know we pull our questions from SEO Assist. So we've got the questions that you guys are out there asking, about these topics out there in the world. So just starting a little bit how you started out with how you got started with large publications. I can't say it. Large publications. When people talk about it or not too sure, like even when you say large publications to me, sometimes I'm like, does that mean like magazine or does that mean like TV or is it like certain websites? Like what is really the scope of what you would consider, getting large publication coverage?
So for me, I think when you think of large publications, at least in the industry, think of them in tiers, like tier one, tier two publications. So your tier one publications are going to be places like, Fast Company, Success Magazine, places like that, big name media organizations that have a magazine, if you will, of some sort. Some of them have print and digital, some are just digital, kind of varies. Like Success does print and digital. So for me, that's what we're talking about. Now, for us, though, like in your visibility, your media visibility strategy, that's going to encompass, multimodal. So you're going to have publications where you're writing the article. I guess contextually, those large publications take outside writers. So you would be, a freelancer. It's a one-off thing. You send a pitch, they like it, they say yes, you sign a contract, and that contract still says you will not be using AI. You duly, definitely promise and swear that you are an original writer. Just want to put that out there for the folks who are thinking they're going to AI it up. That's not a thing that's going to happen.
Yes.
And then, you write the piece, edit, go back and forth to editing. They publish the piece, you get paid. And then you can do written, audio, and video for large publications. And so that's why we like it, because it's multimodal. And we also talk about podcasting, being on stages, because you need a full picture. Our sweet spot is writing for publications, right? So we don't do press releases, and we don't do the pick me crowd, right? Like you're trying to collect logos. We're not doing that. We're doing tier one, top tier media organizations that are going to pay you for your thought leadership articles. Now you can get featured and mentioned, which is a different thing. So for those that don't understand the terminology, being a contributor means that you penned the piece. You wrote the article, you get the byline, which is the little blurb that says who you are, who wrote the article. And it also says, these opinions are that of the author, not of the publication. All the disclaimers are there. You get some links, and you can write about the topic that you're an expert in. You can write personal essays, as told to stories. There's lots of different ways that you can write for publications. Then you have folks who get featured or mentioned. A lot of people used to use Haro, help a reporter out. Haro has gone into the
So sad. I
features.
haven't been using it, but I'm sad it's not there anymore.
It's we used to teach folks how to use that if they wanted to get quoted, somebody to pick up their quote. They wanted to be the expert who gave commentary in the article. Because as writers, we use Haro searching for people to, speak in our articles. But now you can use Quoted. And of course, you can use our software, PR Pitches, because we have all of those media contacts in there. And you can send your pitches, right through our software and get in contact with these editors, other freelance writers, podcast hosts, industry organizations who are looking for speakers, whatever. No, but large publications are really those top tier media, the big names that you're going to know. And I say big name, that can be industry specific, right? So if you are in, I don't know, the automotive space, like Monzi wrote for this publication called Ratchet and Wrench for a while, right? Had never heard of it until they reached out and they were like, hey, we saw you wrote an article about this and this. Would you like to write an article for us? And we were like, about cars. Okay. do a little research. Here you go. So large publication could also be niche specific, right? So now that, if you don't know anything about cars, I don't recommend you write for Ratchet and Wrench, but whatever your industry is, right? If you're in healthcare, what is the big magazine in healthcare that people are going to for information like that? So large publication is also industry specific in addition to just general media like, Fast Company, Cosmopolitan, Vogue, a large name like that.
Thank you for that. That's super, super helpful. I'm already, I got more questions, but B, I'm also starting to understand a little bit better, a lot better. Now, I know, so one of the questions that came up, but I know this happens to me a lot. I get those messages, usually on Instagram. They're like, oh, pay for this amount. They don't start with the pay. They say, do you want to be featured? And then they say it's a paid
Yeah.
right? But it sounds like I've gotten them for people say Forbes, people say USA Today. I don't even know if it's still around as much as it used to be, but people say names that I know and recognize. I'm always very wary and nah, that's not right. That doesn't sound
Yeah,
legit. I
it's
don't
not
feel
right.
like I'm paying for it, but I'd love to hear from a professional. what
Yeah.
what do you tell people about those kind of publications? And even if they have a large publication names, are they still considered in that large publication kind of, I'm going to say pot of things that you would want to have? Let me say it that way.
Yeah. Great question. So I'll tell you a couple of the little tricks that are going in there. So kudos to you because your spidey senses were tingling and you knew that something was off here. So what those are kind of like PR chop shops. That's kind of how I would, call them because they are doing pay to play. And what's happening there is they are issuing a press release in that organization's publication. So one, press releases are free. Two, it is not earned media. It is going in the classified section of that publication. So no respected journalist or publication editor is looking at that as any kind of social, right? Because you can issue a press release about anything you want to. You can say, Akila is the number one tech brain in the entire planet. And she is so fabulous that she just, drips from her pores the gold. And they'll run it because it's a press release. You paid the wire fee and off you go. So that is not media coverage. That's not earned media coverage. Now, sadly, a lot of people get sucked into this, like, the New York Journal, Disruptive Magazine. All of these are pay to play situations, meaning your credit card swipe was successful and you got in. So spare me the drama when you're posting about how honored you are on your Facebook page about being in these publications. So no. But most people just don't know, right? And I would respect you a whole lot more if you said, I paid $5,000 and they got me in all these, featured in all these publications. Now, they're not SEO optimized. There's no hot links. There's no backlinks. You got zero, visibility lift from it other than the Facebook post you did where all of your friends fawned over you and your ego feels so much better now, but it didn't do anything for you long term. With real publications, now, and I will tell you this, you will never pay to be featured or written about in a publication, period, full stop. There is no journalist on the planet who forgets for that. Now, are people paying journalists to get in? Yes, they are. There's a shady underbelly. A couple of years ago, Forbes, and Forbes is a great one to talk about for this. Big Forbes, main Forbes, Forbes.com, let go about 300 of their freelance writers because they found out that they were taking money to write about people. And now Forbes is a little unique, and I'll tell you why, because Forbes doesn't do one-off pieces. So like if I wanted to write for Fast Company, for example, rates start around $400 for Fast Company. You have to pitch a story every time, right? So, Julia Herbst, she's one of the freelance editors over there. So I send her a pitch. She likes it. She says, yes, I write the story. That's it. I'm not an ongoing contributor to Fast Company. I got my one in. If I want to write again for Fast Company, I have to repitch Julia with a new idea. Forbes and Inc. are both publications that have columns, so they don't do one-offs. So when you apply or you pitch to write for Forbes, long drawn-out process. You have to submit column ideas, stories, clippings of where you've written before, a CV, all kinds of things to prove that you have the chops to write these articles. And you go before a vetting panel. If they like your application, they go for a vetting panel. And if they like that, then they give you the column and you can start to write. And Forbes has an auto publish. And that means that once I'm in, I'm in. I can write, as many articles as I want a month, and then you get paid on page views, right? So that's kind of a royalty kind of situation. If you will, you get paid so many page views, you get X amount of dollars per page views. So Forbes is different in that aspect that you once you're in, you're in. Now, I want to point out the Forbes Coaches Council because that's another pay-to-play situation.
I was hoping you would go there.
You might get an email or a message or something that says, you've been selected, or after review of your profile, we'd be honored to offer you a spot. And blah, blah, blah. The Forbes Coaches Councils are a pay-to-play situation. They are not part of Forbes. The two people who own the Forbes Coaches Council have licensed the Forbes name from Forbes. They pay $1 million a year in licensing fees to have that name. And those articles you pay the fee, $2,000, all the way up to $20,000, depending on which of the councils you're on. And then you can write. Forbes does not recognize you as a contributor. You are not being paid for those articles. They are not indexed on Forbes. None of that, because it's just a licensing agreement. Whereas Forbes contributors, Forbes is paying them to write. So keep that in mind. And sadly, if you've ever in your entire history of the interwebs written for one of those councils, you're banned from Forbes for life. You can never then write for Forbes. That's in the agreement that you sign with those councils. It's a non-compete. So sadly, so many people don't know that. Now, I will caveat this, right? Is there a place for the pay to play in your media strategy overall? Yes. But the big caveat, it depends on what you do, right? So if you are a corporate consultant, for example, I have a good friend of mine who owns a consulting firm, and he has been a Forbes Coaches Council member for, probably close to 2 decades at this point. He uses that column, if you will, to get, more coaching clients for their advisory firm, big advisory firm, not a solopreneur. So if you can use it strategically, it can make sense, right? Paying the fee annually can make sense. But for most of the people in the online space, that doesn't make any sense to be paying $2,000, $5,000 a year to write somewhere just for the ego stroke. When if you put in the work, you could pitch Forbes, big Forbes, and have them pay you or your expertise. So it's not to say that there isn't a place for it, but I always want people to eyes wide open, right? To be a educated consumer about what it is you're doing, why are you doing it? And I'm a big strategy girl, right? I am not a tactic chaser. A lot of the internet space are chasing the latest, shiniest tactic. And if that tactic doesn't fit in with my strategy, then I don't need that tactic today. Mm-hmm. Or maybe it's too soon or it's too late, or that's not one that would work for me, So having a strategy first, and that's no different with your visibility, having a strategy for what you want to do. Because it's a lot of work to get into a publication, like we've been doing it for years and we get told no all the time, right? Kamanzi has active columns in over 80 publications and he gets declined several times a week. So it's just the game of how it goes. But I want you to be educated in making these decisions and understanding why you want to appear, right? So say, CZQ made a cupcake in a cupcake shop and you have the best cupcakes in the world, in your opinion. And you're like, I want to start, getting my business out there, visibility of publication. Oh, and I say, where do you want to write? For Forbes. Really? Forbes. Well, it's Forbes. Well, then that's about you. That's not about your customer, because Bobby's mom is not reading Forbes.
Not reading Forbes about the cake. Absolutely. Good point. I love that.
So you want to read Forbes because you want to stoke your ego. What does your ego got to do with sell more cupcakes? Nothing. So you want to go to the local chamber and you want to write an article in that publication, right? Or even maybe the school is about, you want to write in places that are what I call target rich media. Mm-hmm. What is it that you do? Where do people who buy what you sell go for their information? If they're not reading Forbes, then you ain't got no business trying to get in Forbes other than your ego stroke. So let's take your ego, let's set it to the side. And let's go look at target rich media environments where potential customers or referral partners or strategic introducers or centers of influence, who are we going after and why? Then we're going to make a list of those publications, and that's where we're going to go after those. So, history.
I absolutely love that. I'm glad you said that, because that goes back to what you're saying too about strategy. So many people just like, oh, I'm getting this and this and this, and it doesn't align with what their business is. I've had, lots of different customers, and I've had to tell people like, that's not for you. That's for you to learn from, but your audience is over here because, and usually it
Exactly.
is that people who are, we kind of get caught up as entrepreneurs in listening to a lot of B2B, because most of the people we see, listen to, even the show is B2B. It's talking to other business owners. But if your
Right.
product is really truly B2C, then you need to listen and learn here, but go over there to do, because that's where the B2C folks are. Like you said, whether it's a local or, school or something like that, or a big baking publication, those kind of things are great, but for that industry. So I'm glad you brought that up. And then I'm really, really glad you brought up Forbes. I was hoping, I was gonna you didn't say it, but I was hoping
That's one of the
talk about
biggest ones, because I can tell you, everybody and their grandmother, when you ask them, what's your dream publication? They say Forbes. And when I ask them why, that's where it falls apart,
it
because
makes so much sense.
it's not about it's not target rich for them, right? So I'm like, what are you doing?
Yeah,
Why are you doing
and
that?
I know so many people like got on the Forbes Council. Like, I remember when it first came out, everybody was, "Oh, I'm on the Forbes Council, I'm on the Forbes Council," and, you say congratulations because you don't wanna be rude, but
Right.
but
I
for
mean,
the
and it's not like they're not putting in work. They got to write all those articles, put them out, right? So yeah,
yeah, I mean,
great job.
they earned it. I mean, they paid for it, that's earning it too,
Right.
but, they went through the steps, so it's not a slight on them, but I love, making sure that people know what it really means and what it
Right.
really is, right? It's
And
not
that's the thing, right? Make informed decisions, right?
ex
So if you're weighing options and you determine that this is going to help your business in this way, that's why I said it can be helpful for your business. I'm not saying that it can't. Now, the when you're paying for features, not the same, right? I don't agree with pay to play and the feature side where somebody's just quoting you or mentioning you, because you can get feature quoted and mentioned in major media for free. So just stop the madness, right? Do not be paying for, so now that's not, of course, people are going to say, oh, but, people pay you to, yes, but I'm not guaranteeing a particular publication. In fact, I'm not guaranteeing acceptance at all. So if anybody's guaranteeing acceptance, there's pay to play going on behind the scenes.
Mm.
Because if I could guarantee acceptance into a major publication, what would I be out here doing talking to you fools? There would be a publication I wasn't in, right? If I could guarantee acceptance, like, miss me with your, can you get, no, I can't guarantee, because I don't control those editors, right? I wish I could, because, I would, but I can't, so I don't. So it's like, why do you want to do what you're doing? And just be informed about what you're doing and how are you going to use it, which, the other day I wrote a post about using those mentions, right? So if you want to be featured or mentioned in the media, somebody's quoting you as the expert. People are not using their press for visibility properly because they lack strategy. So you say you were using Hero back in the day, or using quoted nowadays, or you come across one of my husband's posts that says, "Let me write about you," and he lists off what experts he's looking for. There was never a fee for that, right? And full page feature in a publication with nay assent to be exchanged, because the magic is what happens after you see the feature, and people are missing all of the juicy magic, because they'll say, "Oh my God, article came out today about me. Super exciting." And they make a post and all their friends come and they, give you your flowers. And then that's it. And I'm like, you went through all that to not even have a visibility strategy for how you're going to use that. So just like, and I just tell people, like, off the top of my head, you can share that article to all social platforms in the proper manner of that platform, right? If it's TikTok, you got to do a video about it. If it's long form content, short form content, all that, right? You can write a LinkedIn post breaking down the key takeaways from that article when you share the article. You can create quote graphics with snippets from that piece and, use them throughout your marketing strategy, not just the one time that you get them. You can record a quick video with your thoughts on the feature, right? how you got the feature, how it felt, what was the interview process like, how did you come up with the takeaways? You get a lot of juice out of just that, little videos that way. You add the outlet logo to your website, right? The as seen in banner on your website or your socials. You can update your email signature with a little as seen in with a little hot link to that article and press maybe whoever you're pitching. You can repurpose content from the article into blog posts, right? So you can use quotes from the piece, your quotes, things your brilliance that fell out of your face. Use that, on your socials, right? So for me, the key is to view each media mention as a content gold mine in your visibility strategy. And I would say the majority of people are not doing that. They get the feature, they're very excited, and that's where it is. Don't
I
waste your
love that,
visibility.
and thank you so much for the strategy and breaking that down because that's important. And you're right, people just don't use their visibility enough. Like I feel like I'm even one of those people. Like I'm always getting visible, but do I go back and use it enough? I got to go back go back and look at some things. I did have one more question about different types of publications, and then we'll move on to the next thing. Shout out things like Shout Out Atlanta. Like I know I was featured in it a couple of like maybe 2-3 years ago now. But like Shout Out Atlanta, I think there's one Charlotte, but there's a bunch of like Shout Out magazine kind of sites, and they're not necessarily there isn't a fee because I didn't pay one. But I know when somebody recommended me from my understanding and they contacted me and
Mhm.
said, hey, we want to talk about you, we want to have you, and they had me answer some questions, and then they had a whole post about me. So it's kind of cool because it was like a content question but actually it was about time management and work-life balance, which I got real strong opinions on. Um, and then with that, it was like a link to a whole article that was about me. So I actually liked the way that they did it. And then at the end of my part, like when I gave them all my information, they asked, who else should we feature? And they reached out to some of them. So they're kind of like doing it by referral, it seems. At least that, I don't know if they all work like that. But what are your thoughts on publications like that? Like, are they
Well,
worth
see, and
good?
I would call that hyper local, right? And I think that's fantastic. So I have a mentor that used to tell me that if everyone in your zip code doesn't know about you and your business, you've still got work to do. Stop trying to land the eBays and the Walmarts of the world and go get out in your backyard and get some business, right? And I think in the online space, we have kind of forgotten how to prospect belly to belly and locally, right? I think things like your local chamber, Shout Out Atlanta, pieces like this, right? We got my daughter. She owns a salon, boutique salon. We got her on the local news, right? Because that's earned media because that's what we do in these streets. Two, she needs physical people to show up at her storefront. And
Mhm.
so being in hyper local outlets is important, right? So she's been on the news twice now and she got booked out. It was really exciting, like her whole salon was booked out, woo, yay. So things like that to me are very, very important because that allows your name to get out there in a way that you can get business, more readily, right? Because you can have coffee dates in person, right? You might be able to go speak at the company or whatever have you. Or if you have a physical product, people buy your stuff. So I love hyper local publications, right? Whether that's news media or the local, magazine in your HOA that goes out to all, 3,000 homes in your subdivision, right? If you had a pressure washing business, wouldn't that be hunky dory to be in that magazine, right? So that's what I say when I talk about people being strategic with where you're showing up and what you're doing. Now, is it fun to have some extras too, just thrown in there from time to time that maybe don't net anything? It's just more the internet juice. Yeah, great. But that's also part of your strategy. So I love things like that. I've been in the alumni magazine of my college, a couple times. Like when I did my TED talk, they gave me a 2-page spread in the alumni magazine, right? I was like, they reached out and they were like, hey, TED talk, do you want to be in it? And I was like, yeah, dude. So, don't sleep on the organizations that you have affiliations with, right? If we're in a sorority, your college, your alma mater, so there's lots of ways to use what would be like tier 2 or tier 3 media, if you will, but use it very effectively, depending again on what you do. And that's why you have to have a strategy.
I love that, and thank you for that. Like, I always wonder because with shout out Atlanta, I actually don't live in Atlanta. I
Mhm.
think I've been in Atlanta twice. I'm in Jersey, but they reached out and they said it didn't matter because that was my first thing. Like, well, I'm
Yeah.
not in Atlanta, right? Because for some reason, Entrepreneur Streets, everybody thinks everyone's in Atlanta, and I'm like, you know, very much a northern girl, but they said, they said it was okay, it was cool, and they still featured me. But I love that, kind of thinking about what local things can you get into. Funny enough, I did get a whole article I lived in Clifton, New Jersey, so in the Clifton Times, which is our
Yay!
Google publication. But so you're gonna laugh at this. It was not about my business. It was actually I wrote a book on Kwanzaa because we were talking about it before we started. I wrote a book
Mhm.
on Kwanzaa a couple of years ago, and it's like a journal book, and they wanted to feature something about Kwanzaa, and I was it.
Mm.
Scene that I had just written. It was like the year I just published the book, and so it was cool. We were actually able to do the interview in person, which is very rare to sit with somebody face to face. So it was cool. But now I know I gotta get more intentional about getting out there
Yeah.
in
But
some of the.
see, I want to give you your flowers for that, though, and I'll tell you why. So you said, even though it's personal, that is a misconception, right? And a lot of business owners, I think, have this misconception that they always have to be talking about their business, writing about their subject matter expertise. Absolutely not. There are many, many publications that pay for personal essays, right? So, like, for example, I've written for Business Insider. I've not written any of the business verticals. I've only written in the lifestyle vertical. And I've written about my journey with menopause or my struggle or my disdain for all things menopause. Um, but because when you're writing the piece, right, or even if you're interviewed, right, because we do as told true stories all the time, and as told true story is I would interview you like that reporter did about their whatever, about Kwanzaa, and put that up in the media. You're going to still get links back to your business, right? So even though, I wrote about my menopause problems, the link in my byline were to my business. People still found me because of that. Because we talk about the no like trust factor, right? Relatability. And so visibility, you're not like a robot. Not yet, anyway. We're trying, but not yet. There's still human things around here. Um, so your relatability is different, right? So, writing about menopause, I had a lot of women in my inbox about, their journeys and what had happened with them and, what was going on. And it sparked great conversations. And so then I started to get more followers. And as I got more followers, people clicked through again to, well, what does this lady actually do? And, got some clients, right? So don't sleep on personal essays as well, or being quoted about things in your life. Like if you run a nonprofit or if you volunteer at the animal shelter, like whatever it is, right? It's still part of who you are because you are a whole person. You are not just your business. So, when we're going to put together a media strategy, we're going to look at all of those personal angles as well, right? Like we talk about our travel a lot. We've written for travel publications at this point, many, 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 because we travel all the time. Um, like we've been on CNBC, Make It, all the things, right, for our travel, shenanigans, because we be shenanigating around the world.
I love
So,
shenanigans. Just want you to.
I know. So, like your personal story is equally as valuable, right? Because we talk about building a personal brand too on the interviews in our trades. So don't sleep on your personal stories because you can, talk about those as well, right? And as for my job, you get paid for the stories, right? Like if you have a crazy sex life, you want to write a cosmopolitan about that, they're going to pay you $1 word to do it. So, like, don't be sleeping on your personal stories.
Now, with that is a good segue into my next couple of questions because it was about how do you get started, and of course, how do you get paid? It's funny 'cause, I got my mug today with one of our our slogan, "Now visible and paid." But
We call it published and paid. We're all
yes,
about getting paid around here. See, we're all finance
exactly.
girlies. We're all about getting paid.
Don't want to be just visible and broke, right? We don't need broke, visible, and good. But
Yeah.
but how do you just get started? I know you guys have a tool, so we're definitely gonna talk about that. But how do you like even before tool, like the BT version? How do you if I'm not listening to this and I'm like, this is great, I need it for my business. Of course, I need it for some payments. Like I want to start doing this. What are some things you suggest and recommend people get started with?
So I always tell folks, to coast a little bit off of our brother Russell. You're one pitch away. You are one pitch away from getting published. And I will tell you this: you do not need a big following. You do not need to be a journalist. You do not need to have ever written anywhere in your life before. So you need none of these things. So if you've had these in your little mind and they're ruminating around why you can't, I want you to take them. I want you to go throw them in the trash because you don't need none of them. One pitch away. That is what the editor cares about. What is the pitch? And the pitch is the story angle, right? Like why, how, what are we doing here? And so a story angle basically is going to be a title, they call it a working title because that's another thing. Publications are going to change your title because they're all about the SEO. Like Monty just had an article come out on BuzzFeed a couple days ago, and it's on its third title, and it came out this week because they A/B test. What's click-through rates? How's it going? And they use this title on this platform, that title on this, so if don't be all in love with the title because they're going to change it because they know what works for their audience. But anyway, so you have your title and you have 2 to 3 sentences of what the takeaways from the story are, why it's relevant for the story to be told right now. And then, so for me, what am I going to do first? What you don't do is you don't come up with a story and think, where can I send this? That's not how that works. You are going to research because you have an objective for your visibility strategy. You are not just out here throwing shit against the wall. Well, can I say that on your podcast?
Yes, you can.
Okay. I was like, because I cut a lot. I've been trying to be good here.
Okay.
Don't fell right out. So you're going to search around. So say that you want to write for, I don't know, if you want to write for Fast Company, for example. And they do workplace culture, leadership, hiring trends, careers, equity inclusion efforts. That was the last pitch I saw from Julia that she was looking for. So you see her call for pitch and you're like, oh, okay, I could write about, hiring trends. And so you go to Fast Company's website and then you look and you read and you absorb what kinds of stories are being published. Is it first person? Is it third person? Is it an as told to? Is it a personal essay? Like, how does it go? Do they have 3 experts quoted to back up an opinion? Like, what is the structure of the articles that they're using? And then you can see, okay, where, go to their terms and services to find out who should I pitch here? Get their email. All pitches are going to go via email. You are not pitching in the DMs because you will be ignored. I can promise you that. And then you put together your pitch based on the guidelines of that publication, right? So, I then would say, okay, I want to write about hiring trends. I come up with my title, my takeaways of what the article is going to be about, and then I send that in to Julia at Fast Company. And if she likes it, she'll respond and say, I like this story, or hey, this is a great story. Could you tell it from this angle? Or this is a great story. I could only run it if you had 3 licensed psychologists weigh in on what you were saying. Can you do that? Yes, So you negotiate the terms of the article. And if everybody agrees and she says, okay, I'll pay you $400 to write this article and I need it by, January 4th. We agree. I send you a contract. You fill out said contract. You write said article. You go back and forth on edits in a Google Doc. And once it's polished and ready, it posts. And then they say, okay, invoice me. And then the money comes sliding into your bank account. And we're all happy about that part.
Yeah, so we all do a dance. I love that.
I need like a little money rain or something to come down my screen.
So,
because let's face it, y'all are writing dissertations on the goddamn Facebook, and nobody is saying as seen in the Facebook feed. No, they are not. But they will say as seen in Fast Company. So
that is
how to get paid.
That is our soapbox, because I am always like, I go to people's posts like, this could be a blog post. All these wasted words that you're throwing out into the blue ocean. And I literally have and I talk about this a lot. So my audience is probably like, she's talking about this again. But I have a slide with a GIF on some of my presentations where it's, I forgot what show it's from, but the guy takes a person's phone and throws it out into the ocean. And I always say, this is what you're doing with your content. and it's blue, just like like Facebook, that you're literally throwing it out into the ocean, and it makes a small blip. And then you never see it again. So same exact thing, y'all. You could be sending those long dissertation posts to an actual publication to get ran. Now, one of the things you said in that, as you were giving us that strategy and that breakdown, was that you talk about the price after you give them the idea. Is that normal to the process, or should people be holding to make sure they're going to get paid before they share their ideas? I know everyone's always afraid that somebody's going to steal their intellectual property and all that other good stuff. What do you say about that?
Yeah. Well, one, I want all the internet entrepreneurs to calm down because there is no major media outlet that's going to steal your idea. You are not that important. I just want you to rest. I want you to take a load off your chest.
Good. I mean, yeah, the idea was good.
Nobody's going to steal your thing. Two, that proprietary thing you did, honey, nobody cares. Like the editor at the Wall Street Journal is not looking for your little proprietary thing that you came up with because they ain't never heard of it before, so they don't care. So lots of publications pay, but there are many that do not, right? So if the publication pays, you know that ahead of time as part of your research. If they don't pay, then they don't pay, and they just don't pay. That's just how that works. So publications have their rate. And if you are looking for publications to pitch, so an easy way is you can go on to Twitter, if you still are over there on Twitter. Hashtag journal request is where you can find a lot of journalists saying, hey, I'm looking for this, I'm looking for that, I'm looking for this. They're all over on Blue Sky now, so we're over here on Blue Sky having a good time. Same hashtag journal request. With that said, you can see, and they'll oftentimes put the rate in their tweet. Like Julius, their rates start at X. Depending on whatever or length, rates start at blah blah. Paying 50 cents for it, paying 80 cents for it, paying $2 for it. They'll usually tell you. But there are some publications that don't pay. Now, am I saying don't write for publications that don't pay? I'm not saying that, because I'm saying that if you have a strategy and that publication is a target-rich publication for what it is you do and the people you want to reach, then by all means, go forth and do your thing. If they pay, oh my God, isn't that better? Isn't that better? Because I could take that dissertation and you cannot repurpose. I want to put this out there because that's a question I get a lot. Can I just repurpose? No, because your Facebook post is not an article, Susan. No. All right. Your Facebook post was a Facebook post. It didn't have no H2s. It wasn't, proper grammar, editing, commas in the right place. There's no emojis. Like, no, you can't. So you have to write original articles every time for the publication. Now, can you use that premise? Absolutely. I mean, we've told our travel story 17 ways from Sunday. It's the same story, right? We traveled to the same place, but the angle from which we have told it has shifted, right? Told it from the standpoint of being a grandmother who missed her grandkids, from being a mom whose kids were appalled that she sold the house they grew up in and left the country, from the standpoint of what kind of tech did we use, from the standpoint of travel rewards, how do we earn travel rewards to do that, how do we pay for it there, from the standpoint of digital nomading, what does it cost us to live. Well, so same story, you could tell it in 100 ways. So yes, you can repurpose, but articles are not social posts. They're also not blogs, right? Because you have to use the style guide of the article. And this other thing that I want to put out there, especially in internet land, because I can't tell you how many stories fall apart every week. You have to provide documentation for everything you claim.
Mm-hmm.
So if you out here on the book that is face, talking about you 7-figure this and you 8-figure that, and you come and I'm going to write about you, I need tax returns. I need a tax return to show me the 7-figure this and the 8-figure that. And somehow those tax returns don't materialize.
That article won't either.
That article won't either. Because if you can't back up what you said, I can help you. Like I was saying I was a digital nomad. I sold my house and I used the money to do this. I had to provide the documents from the sale of my house to that editor and my bank account and show what I was spending on rent, what I spent on play. I had to document every cent. So this is not the internet. This is for facts and not alternative facts or anything like that. Fact, actual fact. So
That is
keep that in
that's
mind.
good to know, and I'm glad you said that. Like, I've heard, especially people talking about income-wise, if anytime you get featured for income in a real publication, that's how you almost know it's real, is if they ask the actual
Exactly.
verification. So, but I've not heard, like, even, like, for events, like, they want you to verify, like, if you moved or something like that, if that's part of your story, that they also
Yep.
want that is
Any fact you're alleging in your story, you got to back it up
okay.
because, they don't want to be sued by lying about something,
Nice.
or some other party coming in and saying, hey, that's not what happened, or that's,
Mhm.
So yes, and the interview is recorded, right? And so I'm going to interview, it's going to be recorded. I'm going to submit that recording to my editor with the article because they're going to fact check that I didn't misquote you in some way, right? Or I didn't take liberty with what you said and how I wrote the article. So, because we're not out here to trap anybody or shock jock anybody, we're not doing that. So yes, be able to back up, your assertions. Like, I was doing a story once about inheritance and people coming into a large sum of money and how they spent it, and and I said, my post that you'll need to provide documentation of said inheritance and how you spent it. And a lot of people responded, I got but they didn't want to provide the documents. And I'm like, can you
Mhm.
read? Like, so I'm just going to take your word for it that you inherited $250,000 and you spent it in a certain way. I'm going to take your word for it. You have no trust, no letter from the attorney, like nothing that proves that you got this money.
Look,
Well, I do, but I'm going to
especially
show you
coming
that.
from finance, that
Yeah.
you can't
I was
even
like,
get $250,000 without documentation.
I'm cutting side eye. Ain't nobody transferring no money without some documents. Right. But, and so I was like, well, then you can't be in my story. Right. Like, I have to verify. Like, I can't just be putting out all kind of nonsense here. So be prepared to document and verify if you want to be written about or if you're writing a story, right? Like the CNBC Make It story. And we were like super excited to be on CNBC Make It. And we were also penning the story, right? Like they were interviewing us. We were going to be on CNBC Make It and we were also going to pen it. So I got paid. I got paid by CNBC Make It to tell my travel story. So no, sleeping out here in these internet streets. Anyway, but I had to provide all this documentation and editing for that particular story. It's 4 months. We were back and forth in editing for 4 months of changing this, switching that, adding this. What about this picture? I don't like that picture. Because all publications have an editorial calendar. So, which is something I tell private clients if we do any, private clients, which we don't have a lot of private clients these days. We don't do that often because people have unrealistic expectations of when it's going to be published or if it's even going to get picked up, right? So, if someone hires me for 1 month to try me, no, keep moving. I don't do try me, right? Because like Google, like we got receipts. So, but sometimes it takes months for that story to come out because their editorial calendar is lengthy, right? Like we were telling our students that they were trying to pitch Christmas stories. I'm like, y'all missed that boat. That those stories happened months ago. I'm like, you can be pitching St. Patty's Day stories now. That's what we're up on. Like we done read all the other things already. So just knowing that there's verification, right? We're not trying to be out here just making stuff up on these. We're not doing that.
And I love that you brought up another really good point about the timeline, because similar SEO, like if you come in and you talk about, I need this for a launch, I'm telling you no. we should have had this out to be, already attracting people to be part of your launch, and you can use it to like follow up in the launch, but it's not
Right.
Google's not going to be like, oh, he's launching. Let me make sure I send them some traffic real quick, right? So I'm glad you talked about the timeline of it all, that it's not automatic, especially if it's something that's like like holiday guides and stuff like that. I know when I worked with retailers, I used to have them start to look at holiday guides and pitch holiday guides, even website holiday guides, like not even just publications, but anyone who's doing a holiday, if they did it last year, they're thinking about it in July.
Yes.
So they're going to do
Yeah, we've been writing e-commerce stories for months. Like we wrote those months ago, and so now they're all coming out. But we wrote those months ago.
Yeah, so I used to tell them the same things. I love that we're having that part of the conversation. So I know we're going a little bit long, so sorry. I think I said
All good.
it's always great conversations, but I do want to talk about, so now we know how to do it BT before tool. Let's talk about how PR pitches helps to make that process easier, and how someone could use that to potentially make this a full process in their business.
So the beauty of PR pitches is we have aggregated all of those contacts for you, right? So if you go in our tool You can search up the publication, you can search up the podcast, you can search up the industry organization, you can search up the event, you can search up a topic, you can say, go to the publications and say, I don't know, leadership publications, and it'll pull them all up there. And the contact information for the different editors at the different verticals are there, as well as the contact information for freelancers who write about those topics. And we also have all of the pitch templates, right? So you don't have to go, what do I say? I got you. I got you. We have a template for podcast pitching, for being featured as a guest, as a guest expert, or for being a contributor, for all different kinds, for just speaking on a stage, whatever it is. We have templates for all of those. We have AI to help you write your pitches if you're not crafty. And there's over 4 million contacts in there. And we cover a lot of different areas. And so you hook it up to your email. So the email looks like it came from your email. And so you'll see those responses come to you in your inbox in your email when people respond to you. So it has a tracker. So you can see, you can upload contacts to our database. So if you wanted to keep everything in one place, you can upload your own contacts and have it on there. There's a dashboard. It gives you stats, tells you how it's going, who's in the pipeline, where it's happening, all the things. You keep track of all the things. And then we have weekly training. So every Friday morning, in fact, Monty is training right now. Our group started at 10 o'clock. We have weekly training. And today we're actually teaching about how to craft that killer pitch, right? Because not all pitches are created equal. As freelancers, we get lots of pitches ourselves. And I'm just going to say y'all need some help because those pitches are not good. So they get ignored most of the time. Even good pitches get ignored, right? It's just how it is. But the better chances, the better quality pitch. And so we'll let you know who's looking for stuff, what's going on. We review your pitches for you before they go out. So we have a process where, say you found you're trying to send something to Cosmo, you can send it to us first. We will review the pitch. We will give you feedback on it before you send it to the editor so that you improve the chances the best that you can to, send that in. If you are writing, we even edit some of our students' articles. They're going to put their first article in and they're nervous and send it in, send it to us. Let's have a look at it. And so we'll edit it up for them. Because Kamanti and I have both been editors for the Goodman Project. And then we write for, a lot of places. So we do this a lot.
Good.
So, all the things, right? So the tool just automates that process for you because the search for an editor and their contact information and what to do is lengthy because you got to go here and you got to look this, you got to Google, you got to test the email, and you got to test the ideas and all the things. So for us, this just aggregates into one place and you get our brains on your stuff, which, we joke all the time that is the cheapest you will ever get our brains on your stuff because 1-to-1, that's a premium service, very high ticket. But for I think it's the second tier because we have a $97 tier where you get all the contacts, the training, you get access to stuff, but you don't get to be part of the group. You don't get to access to us. I think the $297 tier is where you get access to the Friday trainings and sending us all of your stuff. That is the cheapest you will ever get access to our brains on your visibility and publicity strategy. So
Nice.
I think it's a helpful tool because it just cuts out a lot of the pre-work.
I love that. And let me tell you, as a SaaS owner myself, when skilled people with big brains start making SaaS, you get less of their brains on your stuff. Get into these tools because I know same thing I'm doing with SEO. It's like building everything that I know, everything that I can help you with, everything that I can do is built in there. So getting me is not.
Exactly. But like I said, we have that second tier that we, because we actually enjoy helping folks with this, right? We love to see people getting published and paid. And so, we'll help you out in any way that we can. But if you want 1-to-1, we do strategy sessions, 1-to-1, all that stuff. So, but if you want any done for you, that's a whole different ballgame that we're talking about.
And generally, because what you put into the tool, you would be going through the tool anyway. If you want me to do it for you, guess what I'm going to do? Open up this tool and I'm going to use it. There's still some things you do, but you're going to use things you got, right? That's why you built it.
Yeah.
So, Lisa, I know we went a little bit long on this one, but I appreciate everything you've been sharing with us. I'm going to shorten our lightning round. Usually I ask a whole bunch of questions, just things I ask everyone. But I do want to ask the last question because this, I think, is the best question of them all. What is the one thing that I didn't ask you that I should have asked you in this interview?
Oh, gosh. Okay, let's see. They didn't ask me that you should have asked me. Hmm. I don't know. I think we covered a lot of ground. I think I would
You
just
did. I
say
feel like
that,
I
like,
learned so much. So thank you.
is it possible? Yes, it's possible. Is it, it's not, it's simple, but it's not easy. Right? We have a process that we, tried and true for 10, 12 years now. So it's possible. It's simple, but it's not easy. And you need to have thick skin because you will be rejected a lot. And if you can't handle that, this is not for you.
Now, I do have one question because when you said that and it brought up in my mind, what if someone says, I'm not really a writer? Is it something that they can learn to do or get better at so they can write for publications? Or do you say, oh, well, maybe video strategy might be better for you then?
That's a great question because I will tell you that I'm not a writer. Writing is not my first love. I write because it's just the thing that you have to do in the space that we're in. But these publications are multimodal, right? So you can have written, video, or audio. Not all of them, 98% of them, except all three modalities. The pitch process is always going to be the same, though. It's always going to be a written pitch via email. You're just pitching an audio idea, right? So you're not recording it first and sending it in, recording the video and sending it in. Some publications are dual, right? So like currently Kamanzi writes in CNET and the vertical called CNET Voices. Those articles are written and video. So he has to record a video to go with every article. So photos and video. So that's kind of a dual thing that's going on there. But those are assigned articles. We didn't even talk about assigned articles. That's a whole nother bonus thing we can. I got so many rabbit holes. Assigned articles are when you've gotten in via a pitch, and then the publication likes you, and they start to assign you articles. So you are no longer pitching them. They're going, hey, can you write about this for us? Hey, can you write about that for us? And then to answer your question about writing, is it something you can learn to do? Absolutely. Is it something we go over in our PR Pitches Friday sessions? Absolutely. Because there is an art to writing publication articles. You do not have to be a freelance journalist. To give you an example, right? Like Kamanzi didn't even go to college. He dropped out of high school when he was 16 and he writes for the largest publications in the world. So it's not about your writing prowess, right? It's formulaic how you write an article that, plays well. It's formulaic and we teach you the formula and how to do it and, practice and all of those kinds of things. So it's possible. But like I said, you can also pitch audio or video ideas. And if they like them, then you would, record the thing. And the post-production is always done by the publication. So you would record the raw video and they're going to post-production it with their logos and links and all the other things. So you don't have to be a great writer. It's a skill that you can learn like anything else. And if you are a subject matter expert or you're telling your own personal story, like you are the subject matter expert in yourself and your life, and we'll just help you polish that up and how you tell that story. So
Thank you. And thank you for that last tidbit and that inspiring that Kamanzi didn't even, get his degree and all the other things that everybody says you need and still able to go out there and really kill it at this, like
Yep.
do amazing thing and help others.
One pitch away.
One pitch
You're
away.
one pitch away.
It's like telling you that you're one pitch away. All right. Well, thank you for that. Tell us where we can find you, where everybody can find PR pitches. I know you had a special offer that you told us about that you wanted to share. So tell us about all the great things and where to find you.
Yes. So you can find us real easily. prpitches.com is where our tool is. And the freebie that I have for you guys is 25 free pitches with our tool. So if you use the link that Akila provides, it'll have you to sign up for the tool. You get 25 free pitches that you can use. And of course, we'd love to have you in our community if you decide you want to be a part of that. You can find me on all the socials, Cindy Rodriguez Constable. I'm out there, Facebook, LinkedIn, all the interwebs. It's the same way. So I'm pretty easy to find in that regard. Or you can also go to uboraadvisory.com. Ubora is UBORA advisory.com. And you'll see all the programs that we offer there, including our peer pitches tool.
Thank you for this. And we'll definitely have everything listed in the show notes. So guys, if you are listening and you're like, I want to get started with this, make sure you head on over to the show notes and check out those links. And we will talk about this some more in our SEO Growth Mob group. See you guys. Thank you for a great episode, a great interview.
Hi, thank you.
It is business. Big business.
Thanks for listening to the Girl Get Visible podcast. I hope you've learned a lot about how to get your brand out of sea of sameness and start to get visible. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review the show, and let us know how much you enjoyed it and what you've learned from this episode of the Girl Get Visible podcast. I'll see you in the next episode.
Get visible. Girl, get visible. Girl, get visible. Girl, get visible. Girl, get